Hello friends. One day a boy saw a few mountaineers climbing up the mountains. When he saw the mountaineers, he asked a question to his father. Why do the mountaineers carry oxygen cylinders on their back? Another day he posed another question to his father. He asked, why do the sea divers when they go diving down the sea, why do they carry oxygen cylinders on their back? Can't they breathe normally like us? Father tried to quench the thirst of the child, but the child was not satisfied. As the boy grew up, the child participated in a 100-meter race, and during that time he felt there was some pain in his muscles, calf muscles and thigh muscles. So he asked his mom, what is the reason for the pain? Mom just gave him heat therapy and then he felt relaxed. But the questions were still reeling in his mind. The child was thinking, what were the answers to this? Are such type of questions also reeling your mind? Then this video will give you the answer. So this is Veena and you're watching Veena's Edugrid. You have learned in the previous video that when oxygen enters the alveoli, the blood vessel which is passing below the alveoli is having less of oxygen. That is, there is an oxygen depth there. So the oxygen enters from the alveoli into the blood vessel, and the carbon dioxide leaves the blood vessel into the alveoli, and from there it finds its exit. When it reaches the blood vessel, the oxygen combines with the hemoglobin of oxygen and forms oxyhemoglobin. Now this oxyhemoglobin this provides energy to every tissue of the cell. Now what happens at the sea level? The oxygen level is 21%. So all the oxygen molecules, they combine with the hemoglobin of our body, of our blood cells. But when you climb higher at a 13-kilometer high above the sea level, the oxygen concentration becomes low and all the oxygen molecules cannot combine with the hemoglobin of our blood cells. So our body receives very less oxygen, and if the body receives less oxygen, then you will not have the energy to climb up the mountains. So to have sufficient amount of oxygen, people carry oxygen cylinders so that they can make up for the oxygen depth. But when a sea diver goes down the sea, there he possesses another problem. In the sea, the fish breathe through the gills and they breathe the oxygen that is dissolved in water, and we breathe through lungs, and our lungs cannot breathe the dissolved oxygen in water. So, and as we go deep into the sea, the oxygen level also reduces. So in order to have the proper amount of oxygen, the sea divers also carry oxygen cylinders on their back. Now when this oxygen, oxyhemoglobin, when it passes through the blood vessels, these blood vessels, they supply it to the tissues of our body. Now here the oxyhemoglobin, it faces another problem. The tissues are continuously working and they are using up the energy. So there is an oxygen depth in the tissues, and the blood is rich in oxyhemoglobin. So the blood supplies the oxygen to the tissues. And when the tissues or the cells, they obtain this oxygen, they undergo cellular respiration, and during this cellular respiration they release energy. Now what is cellular respiration? Cellular respiration is nothing but release of energy from the breakdown of the chemical bonds of the food. That is cellular respiration. Now during cellular respiration, lots of energy is released, and this energy is released in two processes. When sufficient oxygen is available, then it undergoes aerobic respiration. That is, when oxygen is available, then the cells undergo aerobic respiration. When oxygen is not available, then they undergo anaerobic respiration. So hope you have understood what is aerobic. Aerobic respiration is when there is oxygen available, then the cells undergo aerobic respiration, and if the oxygen is not available, then they undergo anaerobic respiration in the absence of oxygen. Now, during respiration, cellular respiration, lots of energy is released, and this energy is stored in the ATP, in the form of ATP in our body. And where is this ATP stored? It is stored in few organelles of our cells, that is the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the organelles in the cells which will store the energy in the form of ATP. So mitochondria is also known as the powerhouse of the cell. Now, what is the structure of mitochondria? It is a double layer membrane, and it is rod shaped and present in the cell of our body, and it consists of the outer membrane and the inner membrane. And in the inner membrane, it has few fold-like structures known as cristae, and then inside it is filled with matrix. So this is the mitochondria, cell organelle in our cell, which will store the energy in the form of ATP. Hence it is known as powerhouse of the cell. And in what form is the energy stored in the ATP? It is stored in the form of phosphate bonds. Whenever we require energy, this phosphate bond breaks and the energy is released. So this is how the energy is released in our body. Now let us learn how the cellular respiration takes place. Glucose. The blood supplies, even you have learnt in the previous chapter that blood supplies the food materials to the cells. And in what form it supplies? It forms supplies in the form of glucose, amino acids, fatty glycerols, in all such type of ways. So this carbohydrate, that is glucose, it breaks down into two molecules of pyruvate, that is 3 carbon molecule known as pyruvate. And now if there is oxygen available, then it undergoes aerobic respiration, and then forms carbon dioxide, water, and lots of energy is released. If oxygen is available, then this pyruvate molecule, it undergoes aerobic respiration, and carbon dioxide is released, water is released, and huge amount of energy is released. Suppose if oxygen is not available, then it undergoes anaerobic respiration, and then it forms lactic acid, and very less amount of energy is released. Example, bacteria. And if otherwise, it also forms ethanol, carbon dioxide, and again very less energy is released in some organisms like yeast. So let us once again recapitulate. Glucose molecule, it breaks down into two molecules of pyruvate, both are 3 carbon molecule. If oxygen is available, then it undergoes aerobic respiration and forms carbon dioxide, water, and huge amount of energy is released. If oxygen is not available, then it undergoes anaerobic respiration and lactic acid, and very less amount of energy is released, for example, bacteria. And otherwise, ethanol, carbon dioxide, and again very less energy is released, example, yeast. That is how you must have seen in the batter, the dosa batter, idli batter which is prepared. Your mother mixes it very nicely, and then by the next morning you will see it will get inflated because carbon dioxide is filled in it, ethanol is filled in it, carbon dioxide is filled in it. So this process is known as fermentation. Now there is one more question which was asked by the child, and that has to be answered. So when a sprinter, he runs 100 meters, when he is running very fast, while he is running very fast, he breathes very less of breathing takes place, and whatever energy is available in the body is used up for running. But he is continuously running and he requires more energy, but his breathing is very less, and so less oxygen is entering into the body. So what happens is the muscles in our legs, they undergo anaerobic respiration because oxygen is not taken, so they undergo anaerobic respiration, and few amount of energy is released which he uses for running, and lactic acid is also produced, and this lactic acid gets accumulated in the muscles of the thighs and in the calf muscles, and this accumulation of lactic acid gives you the pain. So that's why when you go undergo strenuous exercises, or you go for 100 meters race at a stretch, when you run without breathing much, then lactic acid is produced, because their respiration, your cells undergo respiration in the absence of oxygen, and this lactic acid which is accumulated in the muscles of your legs, they give you the pain. And when you take rest, for some time, this lactic acid slowly gets released from your body, and then you get relieved of the pain. And this is how the person who runs very fast, they develop pain in their muscles, because lactic acid is accumulated in the body. So this is all with this video, children, and in the next video we shall learn more about anaerobic respiration. Thank you, friends.